This is my cousin Trish, who passed away with her little niece. So she's like in the heart and soul of everything I do with time banking. So I didn't get the turn reality into something special Trish that kept going, but everything is like everything connected with time banking for me is connected to her because it was all started at the same exact time I was going through it all. Every year, at the end of August, I go up and half of my family is up in Clifton Park in Saratoga. And so every end of the year we do the go around. I go up, I spend the weekend. We go to the Highlander games and we do the whole thing around that. And then our grand finale is we go to Saratoga and to the racetrack and we let the kids all run around and we have a good time. That's my grandparents on the end, they're 89 years old. And then my brother and his whole tribe, those are all my nieces and my little nephews. Wow, my nephew now is 7 years old. And then on the very end is my Uncle Doug, he's the one who lives in Clifton Park. So it's fun. It's an annual thing. I'm in Saratoga every end of August every year. That's my husband. Without him, I can't do any of this because he lets me work long, endless hours, and now he's taken on the whole New Hope Time Exchange and the energy end of what we're working on. This is another public awareness day at one of the Head Starts in Newport. And again, New Hope brings a lot of this. As much as we can bring children, families, community together, that's what New Hope is really about. That's my daughter. You guys heard a lot about my daughter when I was sharing my story. That's her pregnant with my first grandson. And at that point in time, I was giving her 2 shots a day to keep her alive, never mind that little precious guy that was inside her. And she's still doing good and strong, though she is medically fragile. And we wanted to raise public awareness with children about getting their feelings out and what did that mean. And I picked out just a few I had in the slides. That this is one of my favorite ones. I feel good when people of all kinds get along. And I thought this was an awesome picture. So all the kids did this. I feel good when girl said, when I get to see my grandpa's chickens. And she had a chicken. This is New Hope Time Bank members sitting in and having conversation in Fertile Underground, which is a natural cooperative, and eating, sharing meal together. And this grew out of their need to say, let's start some more transition discussion circles. So now there's discussion circles taking place in a scheduled way out of this conversation. All our Agents of Transformation training is intergenerational, so we invite people of all ages, from young to old, and they participate in the... As you've been interviewing different people, they talk about the Agents of Transformation training that they participated in and then found their way to get involved with me in time banks. And we do transformation wheels, and this is an example of the transformation wheel. Each of these pies is a social justice issue, and in their discussion circles they have to talk about what is something that we would like to see changed, and then what are the challenges going around it, and what would transformation look like. That was actually my first day taking on CEO of Time Banks USA, which I did for about a year. And I think our challenges in transition towns, what they're looking for is very localized projects, but because Rhode Island's so small, we tried to bring a bunch of projects together to make one training work. So we have the challenge that we're very local in Rhode Island, but we tend to do things and bring lots of groups together, which collaboration is good, but it's a challenge if you're trying to get funding to get help. The group picture at the end of our Transition Town 2-day training. And what's nice is you see it was at least 3 or 4 groups and organizations coming together for this partnership. It included Fertile Underground. This is the other International Time Bank conference that was actually led by us here at Brown University in 2011. This is a big family that comes to all our events. This is at the transition towns, having a conversation around peak oil and what that impact. We heard about global warming, so as much as we can raise public awareness as a time exchange around global warming, the Transition Town does a lot of work around that. This was a woman doing Reiki at the holiday party. We get the kids doing as much activities, really being together, socializing, having fun. I also had the great privilege to get to go to Dane County, Madison, Wisconsin, and in 2007 was my first Time Bank conference, and then they did it again in 2009. And this is a panel that I was asked to be on, and we actually talked about our roles and how we work within our time banks and how they connect to social justice. So those are the areas that I get asked to speak to a lot, because our time bank is really unique, taking on that social justice piece and working around co-production. So co-production is our ability to move from people who are only usually actually seen as service recipients to actually now standing right beside who are your formal service providers, and also being part of the helping and the support, not just receiving. Rosemary, who's in the back of the picture, standing up on the very end with glasses and the green. Her name's Rosemary Hernandez. She is actually was one of the founding time bankers in a Vista with us, who was also fluent Spanish speaking. So she started to really help bring in all our time bankers that speak Spanish. So this is actually our first Time Banks team. Half of these people are staff of Parent Support Network, and half of them are volunteers and are now time bankers. And it was really nice because we went through this three-day training. We really learned the basics of time banking, and this was probably our first real, when we started our time bank journey. I experienced 3 tragic deaths, and the most tragic death was my 27-year-old cousin, who was accidentally died in a fire in her home. And that was really hard to go through. And so at the same time I was figuring out the sustainability for Parent Support Network, I also was thinking about what I could do to bring her life and spirit. She was a global student. She was actually studying global studies and abroad, and was in Australia and New Zealand and Chile, and she was traveling all over. And I wanted to keep her spirit alive, and her name's Trish. And so we started to think about, could we create an organization around her? And this is before we even really got to the Time Bank project. We actually came up with language around her name, turn reality into something special. And that got me really even more focused on the time banking. And so the first thing that happened after coming out of that co-production class is my cousin Trish sort of inspired me to keep on this time banking journey. And it was either going to fit as part of Parent Support Network and the work we were doing, or it was going to be this whole new nonprofit birthed out of her existence. And actually I had my whole family involved in the process. Everybody started coming to nonprofit meetings and learning how we were going to build this turn reality into something special. You know, I've been part of Parent Support Network for a really long time, since 1989. That's when I first got involved. And it was until around 2006 that I was always looking out for what was going to be the sustainability of our nonprofit organization that was run by families and for families. And so that sent me on a quest for sustainability to figure out, if we lost most of our funding, how would we still exist? How would we help each other? And that's when I started to research about time banking, and I met Dr. Edgar Kahn and Chris Gray, who is Edgar's wife, who you see holding her hand up in this picture. And I called Chris, and I started telling her what I was working on and what my interest was. And she said to me, we're holding this class in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in partnership with the Dudley Street Initiative, right downtown Boston, and also with Cambridge College. And so I embarked, and I started going to down to the Dudley Street Initiative every weekend and participating in an actual co-production study class with Edgar and Chris.
And this is Vermont. I love, getting away to Vermont. This is up in the Northern Kingdom, like almost on the border of Canada. But to see how people live out there too, once you step out of, like, I live in the city now in Providence, once you step outside kind of that immediate city comfort zone, you don't need to go to Walmart for everything. You don't need to buy new clothes every season. To see that, in rural communities, they really make things last, they make things well, they make things, they make things work very well, and they are so much more connected with nature and with community, and they have so much more of a low impact, on our world, and in terms of, like, longevity, and the sense of community up there. Like, I go up there, once a year with my friends, and they've been going up there forever. But to know that things don't change up there as much, and, you can just talk to somebody at the corner store and make friends, and they'll tell you, all the local information, the local knowledge, that stuff you can't put a price on. That stuff that it's really important to know. So this picture is at a youth group retreat. We did a lot of youth group retreats, an annual one in the summer where we do overnights with youth varying from ages like 13 up to 19 or 20. And we do different leadership activities with them, a lot of team building, a lot of community building also, and it was just really nice to have time, because we'd come together weekly as young people and talk about our day-to-day stuff, but to have that time to bond and really have kind of like that family vacation experience where you're all crammed in sweaty cabins and waking up in the morning and making breakfast. It was really nice to be able to have that with these young people who maybe don't get that kind of exposure in their everyday life. Here's some more from the youth group retreat. I love these pictures. The kids are so happy, and they're just getting to have time to bond and swim. And this was like in September, so the water's kind of cold, but they loved it anyways. Playing chicken fights and stuff. Love these. But I love the opportunity for these young people to come together and really get to know each other on a different level, and we really did create a family. It was just such a wonderful experience. We started doing presentations where we would talk about what helps, what hurts, what changes we needed to see not only in our individual treatments, our individual lives, communities, schools, but also what did we want on a larger scale for young people? How did we want young people to be viewed? How did we want young people to be honored and respected and treated as assets in their community instead of something that you do something to, and something for, do something with these young people. So it was so important for our young people to be able to, after we're doing all this like really strong emotional work and coming together, just to have fun and be social and feel like they're safe, because so many of our young people with their mental health challenges, they cannot participate sometimes in normal youth activities. They get kicked out of boys and girls clubs. They don't necessarily have the friendship networks, to go do the Friday night fun stuff. So to come together and have them be able to do laser tag and roller skating nights and have their family there and have the families feel like, oh my God, people understand. They know that if there's an issue, people will get it. It's not going to be like, oh, we got to pack everybody up and go home. It's like, no, everybody gets it because we've all been there. So just great to have those social experiences with our young people. So, whatever you plan to do with young people, just throw it out the window, because it's never going to go like you want it to. Weather and other forces usually. This was one of the first pictures I took when I was at PSN. I had been like on the job for maybe 2 weeks, and this was on Mental Health Awareness Day. Here's Bren speaking at Children's Mental Health Awareness Day back in 2006, and this was one of my first big events when I was staff. Totally nervous, but Bren did a great job. And we were kicking off a new federal grant, Rhode Island Positive Education Partnership. It was a school-based children's mental health grant. And so this was an event to kick that off, as well as celebrate Children's Mental Health Awareness Day. And there I am talking like so nervous. Conference call with the Youth Council. Those were always fun. We would try to connect with other youth groups around the country as much as we could to gain knowledge and share knowledge as much as possible. So, I know for me, I talked about like how it was really important, like once I lost my job, that to really find myself, and to do that, it was like I need to get out in the woods. I need to be, not surrounded by, a busy 9-to-5 schedule, and it was really great to just be able to have kind of my own time to process, my own time to grow and develop without the identity of a capitalistic job and that kind of stuff, and I'm so disconnected from nature living in the city now, but when I was growing up, it was like, you're so healthy when you're running around in the woods and you're just being a kid getting dirty, and the older we grow up, the more hand sanitizer we have, and just the more we get removed from nature, and I think that's, part of our own challenge as a society. To me, when I was 15, I was definitely like a rebel. I was into punk music, I had a band, I was very angry, hostile kid with undiagnosed mental health. So it was definitely me getting resources and getting support for my physical health needs that were causing my mental health challenges. But I love that I've never really lost kind of that angry teenage rebel spirit, because I think that, you know, has guided me to kind of alternative communities, alternative, you know, economies, and really thinking about things outside of the box. Because I think when you're so prescribed to, you know, the main society, the main flavor of culture, you know, the main you know, kind of capitalistic produce, you know, and consume, that you get stuck in that. And so to be able to step outside of that is really important. I appreciate that my parents let me be a weirdo and let me have that time and let me grow and do weird things to my hair, because it let me explore my own identity, and that's definitely carried into my identity as an adult. I think so many times we think about formal services and like when we have people with challenges, but like just how healing pets can be and how you know, healing animals can be. I think that's important. When I say YSO was a family, I don't just mean it in terms of like, you know, we built a family with young people that were not related by blood. Like, we literally pulled in our siblings and stuff. Like, the far end, that's my sister. She'd come to the Christmas party. You know, she'd been living in Florida for a little while and bouncing all over the place. And she definitely fit the criteria for being a young person in youth group, but had her own feelings about self-identifying. So it was nice for her to be able to come in and drop in when we had events and not feel so isolated when she was having struggles, because she could see that there was a community of other young people that were experiencing it. She didn't necessarily need to come to the weekly groups, but felt that she was connected in many ways. And I really like that, because she has a large group of friends now that she's tightly connected with. They're like family, they're her tribe, that's what we call them. And she's taken so many of the values that we've had, like in youth group and other, like, you know, informal community settings, and really built that into her little tribe. I love that. So I had refurbished, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 old iMac computers for the Time Banks store that we had piloted with the Time Banks. And I had them donated from a school system because they were just going to e-cycle them, which means tear them up apart, and God knows what happens to them, you know, all the nasty chemicals and stuff that are in that. So I refurbished them and was able to give them into the Time Bank store. We had young people and families that didn't have internet access, couldn't do homework, didn't have a computer, you know, or any kind of technology access, where they could exchange that for, you know, for the time dollars. And it's just wonderful. They went really fast. And you know, I'm hopeful that those families got a lot out of them, you know, because I'm sure they're pretty obsolete now. That was like, you know, 2007, 2008 that I did. We had gone to a national technical assistance conference for the federal children's mental health grant communities, and they had hosted it in Katrina, like a few months after Katrina had happened. So we'd gone down there, and it was very interesting to take a tour of that and see how much they have failed that community. You know, the government, I mean they, not just the government, but they, as us as a society, how much we've turned our back on it and said, well, the government needs to handle it, and the government's like, we're overwhelmed, you know, FEMA can only do so much. And to see how, just the degradation of the culture down there, and how much they've lost, and how much people have just turned their backs on them, it just totally. These are the FEMA trailers, these are the FEMA camps, the you know, the welcome centers that they call them. To see these people in humid, like, you know, 70 to 80% humidity, and this was middle of August, you know, 90 to 100 degrees in New Orleans, living in these, you know, trailers that are temporary. They're only supposed to be up for 2 weeks, and they're not made for that climate, so they're releasing formaldehyde from the particle board. You have families, like 5 or 6, living in these cramped trailers. If you look really close at the picture, they just have pipes running into the ground. They just permanently, like, kind of install them so that they have sewage and water running. And just, you know, kids playing in, you know, abandoned lots and, you know, glass bottles. And I was just like sobbing by the end of, you know, the bus ride. And you know, there was this woman, the buses, they had cut a lot of bus service, and I said, gosh, you know, it's really hot to be waiting out here with these young kids. You know, she had 2 other young people, and you know, she looked like she was pregnant, and so I was sitting there going, like, you know, they must be dying. She's like, oh yeah, you know, the person who was running the store, she's like, oh yeah, she could be sitting out here for an hour and a half in the sun in the middle of the day with her babies and waiting for the bus. You know, if the bus is running on time, if the bus is fixed, if there's no breakdowns or anything like that. It was just, it was so appalling to me how we treat people based on race, based on economy, based on, you know, natural disasters, based on, you know, location and region. It was just, you know, it's just absolutely horrendous. My sister, you know, I think when we talk about supports and stuff, family is so key. I'm definitely a huge support to her, and she, in turn, is a big support to me. you know, as we've been growing up. We weren't always close when we were younger, but I think now she's like one of my best friends. And I absolutely love how, you know, she has so many gifts and talents, and, you know, she's definitely made me change my own viewpoint as I see other young people. Like, I know when I was like, you know, right out of high school, going into college, it was like, you know, you have to have a job, you're gonna work, you're gonna go to school, you know, and that was the game, you know, and you work your job, you have a house, and that sort of thing. And I was just so bought into that idea that she exposed me to other people and other friendships where it was like, you know, like a large, vibrant arts community where it was like, you know, maybe people don't have to go to college right after high school, and maybe people don't have to have a 9-to-5 job, and maybe you can bounce around from place to place, and, you know, there's so much of the world to see, you know, and thinking really outside the box in terms of, like, you know, my own safety net and my own perception of what I want my life to be. So, this is a house that we have as a family up in Maine. We'd go up there every summer, and again, you know, just so important to get out in the woods for me, for my own needs. And, you know, that's stuff that you can't really put a price on. You know, like, yeah, let's organize a, you know, a couple $1,000 family vacation and get together and that sort of thing. You know, it's nice to do that kind of stuff when you can, but to have the ability to just go out in nature and heal yourself and reconnect and just kind of, you know, not have cell phone reception and not be worried with the bothers of the world and what other people want you to think about. This is me in high school. This is Narayan. He's the young person that actually brought me into the youth group. I had a car, so that was like the hot commodity when you're young. He's like, oh, you can drive us somewhere. So I was the transportation when we were dating, because he was in youth group because his mom worked at PSN. So I'd come up and I was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. Like, these seems like, you know, kids I would hang out with. And I wasn't really accepting of my own mental health and my own challenges at that time. So I didn't really buy into the whole mental health thing until, like, finally one day it just clicked. You know, it was like, I'm one of you. You know, we're all in this together. Like, I totally support this. I got all fired up because I was one of those misdirected energy people. Like, I thought, like, you know, graffiti, skateboarding, spoken word, just being an angry kid, like, that was like how you get your point across. And it was like, no, you got to figure out how the system works. You know, getting drunk every weekend and wrapping your car around a tree, that's not going to, like, impact the world. You know, being a little punk. Knowing more than other people who have power, and knowing how the systems work, and seeing the strings that control the system, that's what's going to create actual change. That's what's going to make your life better in the future generations. So understanding that piece of it really helped me click. And it was definitely having a mentor in Mike and Lynn to say, like, cool it, you know, find out what you're passionate about and understand how that system works, then you're good to go. But I loved being able to communicate that to other young people, because you could see them struggling. You could see them, you know, I hate my caseworker, and oh, I just want to hit my probation officer, and they just don't get me. And it was like, okay, so why don't you understand why your caseworker never calls you back? And why don't you help change that system? If they're over on their caseload, how can you help advocate so that they have more time to work with you and your peers? So, I adore my mom. She has been a special educator for many, many years, and she's worked actually in the children's mental health field at the national level doing TA. And it was funny, I got hired to work on the Rhode Island grant, and she was actually helping to do technical assistance to sites that were receiving similar grants. And I was like, Mom, I got this job. And she was like, oh, what are you doing? I was like, oh, you know, I'm going to be a youth coordinator on a children's mental health grant from the feds. And she was like, cool, so I'll see you at the conference. I was like, what? Because, like, I didn't understand what she did for years. I just thought she worked in D.C., and we would kid around and tell people she built bombs for the government, because, like, we just didn't understand what she did when we were younger. So it was a great way to not only see my mom in a different light, because I could see her as a professional and not just mom who cooks dinner and, you know, yells at me and stuff, but to also understand and see that, you know, she and I could relate and have, you know, really good synergy with each other around our own learning. You know, you know, I've learned so much from her in terms of how systems work, but, like, you know, I definitely softened her to the idea of involving young people, and I would push back on her and, you know, like, oh, you're doing a conference call? Where's your young person? You know, and she loved and hated that at the same time. So working with the Time Exchange and with other young people through Speaking Out, being able to understand that you don't necessarily have to do things to them. It's not yelling about them and getting sort of things like that. It's how are you going to help them shape their own internal kind of, you know, self-regulation around their life skills that they're going to need as a young person for the rest of their life. You know, I think we expect that as soon as somebody turns 18, it's like, boom, you're an adult, you can handle everything. When for the first 18 years of their life, we've done everything to or for them, as opposed to engaging them in with the process and educating them about the process instead of them being, you know, passively receiving it. So I definitely try to treat young people almost as peers, you know, on a developmentally appropriate level, so that they are included in processes that they're going to need to understand regardless. So, you know, financial stuff, time management, and that's really how we should be looking at positive youth development on a larger scale too for our young people. And we don't do enough positive youth development. We just kind of punish young people and, you know, beat things into them, you know, through the systems we've set up for them, through the educational process, through juvenile justice, you know, and it's difficult, you know, for young people, especially young people with challenges. So. This is my senior picture. This was when I think everything kind of clicked for me. I finally realized, like, you know, I'm passionate about working with young people. I had gotten in a really healthy place around a lot of my own challenges. And I was 18 and I finally, like, realized, you know, I can't be this angry little kid all the time, and I really need to get my stuff together, you know, and figure out what I want to do. And, you know, I'm 26, I'm still working on what I want to do and who I want to be. But I think it was at this point, it was like, I accept responsibility for my life and the choices I need to make and how that impacts my community and myself. When I was a freshman in high school, we had moved, like, I had a ton of changes all around that time. I'd gone from, like, living in, like downtown small town, you know, South County in Wakefield, Rhode Island. I grew up down there, like, right on one of the main streets. I had neighbors. I could ride my bikes to my friend's house to my freshman year of high school. We moved out to a farm that was way out. I couldn't drive yet. And it was like, you know, 10 minutes from town, but that 10 minutes is like an hour if you have to walk when you're young. So I was removed kind of from that, you know, immediate social network I had. My mom had taken a job in D.C. to do the children's mental health, you know, technical assistance thing. And so she would come home on the weekends, but she, you know, Monday through Friday, when you need somebody, when you come home from school, she wasn't there. She was in D.C. So she would come home on the weekends and co-parent and try to, you know, telecommute as she could. But my dad was definitely left a single parent. And that was, you know, challenging, you know, in its own right when you have that kind of mix-up. But so I was experiencing, I moved, I switched schools, I had my parenting structure changed, I had a lot of special health care needs that I didn't understand. I wanted to sleep all the time, like literally, like, I sleep like 18 hours a day if I could. And that's not normal when you're young. Young people want to sleep, but not that much. So I would sleep in late, I was late for school all the time. And then I would come home from school, I'd sleep until I'd eat dinner, stay up, watch TV for like an hour or two, then go right back to bed and sleep in again, you know, for a few more hours. And it was really, really strange. So it took 2 years for me to be able to get a diagnosis to understand what was going on with me. And I went from being like an honor roll student, because I've always been like super studious and wicked perfectionist when it comes to my education, an honor roll student, to failing all my honors classes, and to the point where they were like, yeah, you're not gonna, you almost might have to stay back before No Child Left Behind. So it was really upsetting for my family. I was depressed. I was in, you know, not a great relationship, you know, as a young person. It was, you know, probably borderline teen abusive, like abusive dating violence type of thing. So it was just not a good situation for me, and I was really isolated. So I was able to get help for my sleep. They told me I had sleep apnea, and I knew my uncle had sleep apnea, but he was overweight. He was like obese, you know, he was older, and so I didn't understand that, like, you could be like 6 feet tall, 120 pounds, and have sleep apnea. But I like stop breathing every like 6 seconds when I sleep. So I got treatment for that, and I was able to come off of 3 antidepressants and 2 stimulants. They had me on like enough Adderall to keep an elephant awake for, you know, a week, and I was still wanting to sleep every day. So I got treatment for my sleep apnea, and then everything else got better, and that was like by my senior year, I was back on track. So yeah, but that's how I kind of got my, you know, foot into this world, was through my own mental health experience. My family, my mom was like, had her master's degree, my dad had gone to college, so education was totally stressed in my family. It was like, you know, and everybody else in my family's culture, it was like, you go to work, you go to school, you know, like, I had always had a job since the time I was 14. I was always making money and trying to balance that with school, with my challenges, and then with my family as well, you know, like, it was a lot. But my family has always not put a thing on money. Like, we shopped at consignment shops when I was younger. We never really needed like the nicest, newest things. My mom would always yell at us. We wanted to go to the Gap because that's what our friends had, you know, or Abercrombie, because it was like, it's so expensive, it's just a t-shirt. So we weren't like super materialistic, but it was, my mom liked to have nice things for us, but she was thrifty. I've always been cheap. You can just call me cheap, because I love coupons, I like reusing stuff, like in a mason jar. Like, I'm kind of a hippie when it comes to reusing things and recycling, and I definitely think that my class, having been afforded to have opportunities, you know, like having a stable home life and economically stable, when I was younger, has definitely afforded me a lot of opportunities that young people I know in similar situations, like, have not done as well in their life. And I definitely think that having the opportunity to go to school, go to college, you know, and not have to worry too much about, like how am I gonna pay the rent next week, has been helpful. But I think it's been hard because I've seen so many of my friends, come from very well-to-do families, and their families cut them off when they don't do what their families want them to do, and they fall hard. They're on food stamps, they're on public assistance, and it's like, well, you went to private school, you drove a BMW in high school, and now you're on food stamps. It's like, yeah, it happens that way for some people. It's a lot easier to fall than it is to rise up in our current economy and our current society, and I think that's the troubling thing is how great the divide has gotten. It scares me because I definitely feel like I'm on the shallower end of the pool in terms of economics. I'm trying not to freak out as much about it as I did initially when I had a lot of my financial shakeups. But yeah, there's no middle class anymore, and you can totally see that, and it's really scary because a lot of those the average people, average intelligence, average aspirations, there's no place for them in our society anymore, and we throw them away, and it's really scary. It's either you're going to do well and you're going to contribute to the society, or you're a draw from society. You're pulling negatively from society, and there's nowhere in between anymore.